Okay, hello everyone. Clarke Towson here. I'm the CEO of INTJ Billing. In this video today, we're actually going to watch a video, specifically, it's an audio podcast from Preston Sai. And what he's done, he's put his top 5 Bitcoin fundamental moments. He's cut them into a podcast, and he's released them on his YouTube channel. I've taken a specific section or a couple of sections from this podcast, and we're going to play them now, and then I'm going to talk about my thoughts on what two of these individuals in particular had to say. So one of the individuals is Gigi, and he's a software engineer, computer scientist, and Bitcoiner. And the other person is Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy. So let's play the podcast now, and then we'll come back to it, and I'll make some comments on it.
So let's talk about proof of stake versus proof of work. This is, in my opinion, one of the most important things. The difference between these two is probably one of the most important things for somebody that's new coming into this space to fully understand. So if you were going to characterize the two of them, please do so. And then talk to us about the concerns that you have for proof of stake, because I know you have quite a few.
Okay, I try. I'll have to collect myself. I did not anticipate this question. I have to be honest. So, okay, proof of stake is basically a scam, period. Like, it does not work. It cannot work. Just in terms of timing, proof of stake systems always need to do some proof of work in secret to fight off these race conditions and so on. Like, okay, where should I even start?
Well, no, explain that, because I've never heard that. I've never heard that point of view before. Explain that.
Either they're doing some proof of work secretly, just a little bit, so as an anti-cheat mechanism, or they have a centralized timing server. There is no other way. There is no global time on Earth. There is no global time in the universe. There just isn't, because of relativity. So a light signal takes like 50 milliseconds to travel from one place of the Earth to the other. And that's not like an so there is no global state, like you cannot snap with your finger and decide this is the global state of the world, because you will always have like a 50 millisecond fussy period where it's indeterminate. You cannot, signals need to travel back and forth. There is no global state in the universe, and there is no global state on Earth. And so if you reduce the block time to lower than 50 milliseconds, for example, it would be absolutely impossible to find consensus. And that's also why chains that have slower, shorter block times, they have more orphan blocks, because the risk of running into consensus problems is higher. And Bitcoin's 10 minutes is just like, okay, that's good enough. Even if you have latency issues and so on, 10 minutes is long enough for the Earth to agree on a state. And this is like a physical problem. And proof of stake cannot solve this problem, period. You need to have timestamp servers that are centralized, 2 or 3 of them, that tell you the time. Because for transactions and an order of transactions, you need to know the time. Because otherwise, you would be able to spend money that you do not have. You would be able to spend money that did not arrive yet. For consensus to rise, you need an absolute order of events. And in the universe, there is no absolute order of events. It's all relative. And that's why you kind of need to build up your own array of time, and so on. And proof of work is the only thing that works. All right, that's one thing. That's just the time aspect. With the proof of stake, one of the biggest problems that became solved was who gets the tokens? Who gets the initial supply? How do you distribute the money? First of all, who is allowed to print the money, and how do you distribute it? How does proof of stake solve it? Who decides who can print? Who decides about the money supply and who gets it? And if you don't have are you aware of the term stake grinding and validator selection and all those kind of things?
I've heard some of it through the Ethereum.
Yeah, that's a big problem. What solves this? Proof of work. If you're a validator, or if you control most validators, you are the one who selects the next validator. So who gets the money next? And if you control all of it, then you just give yourself the next slot, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And the systems that run into that, do you know how they solve it most of the time? With something that's truly random, which is proof of work. It's all stupid. It's why are we playing these games? Bitcoin exists. Bitcoin works. Bitcoin is fair. Why are you trying to print your own money? Why are you trying to print your own money into your own bucket? It's all unethical. It's all very, very unethical. And I'm starting to lose my patience because Bitcoin has been around for a very long time. And your proof of work, your proof of stake shitcoin token that you mined yourself or pre-mined yourself, most people don't know Ethereum had a 70% pre-mine, 70% pre-mine. Very few people, like 5 or 6 people, have had 70% of the Ethereum supply before it launched, and all the other projects are very similar, like there's always a few select people that print the money because it's a hard problem. How do you generate money fairly and distribute it across the earth, just like gold was distributed, distributed fairly all around the earth without anyone deciding who gets the money? It's a really, really hard problem. And Satoshi solved it, and he didn't take anything for himself, and he disappeared. And that's why Bitcoin can't be repeated, like it's the immaculate conception of sound money. So why do people continue to like improve upon that and they don't even know the problems the proof of work solves. That's the thing. The proof of stake people have no idea what kind of problems proof of work solves. And so they're not even understanding the problem correctly. And they are trying to come up with a solution. And all the solutions are flawed. And you always, as I said in the beginning, you always have a certain quorum of people that decide what the truth is. And in summary, in like one sentence, proof of work relies on physics to tell you what is true. And proof of stake relies on human judgment. And I will tell you what is true. And that's the big difference. And we want to move away from human judgment. And we want to remove humans from the equation when it comes to the very moral and ethical question of money production and who can control the monetary flows. We have to remove humans from the equation. And proof of stake does not remove the humans from the equation. It reintroduces them. And that's why I'm so worked up about it. And I'm apologies to all the listeners that I'm ranting so hard on that. But it's a moral and ethical question. Who should be able to print the money? And who should be able to deplatform you? Who can stop the money flows? Who can freeze their accounts? Who says what is true and what is not? And Bitcoin and proof of work, it uses physics and mathematics and something you cannot cheat. And all the other systems like proof of stake and also the current fiat system, it's all the same thing. It's a quorum of people that decides what's true. It's the central bank. It's like the 12 people in the room that decide on monetary policy. And we see this all the time. Just look at the proof of stake systems that exist. Like it's human judgment all the way down. And that's why, that's why these systems, they pause and they restart, that they change the monetary supply and they blacklist people and deplatform people and blah, 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 blah. We're back to the old system. Proof of stake is the system, the central bank system that we currently have. And it's immoral, it's unethical. And proof of work is a safe and secure and fair system that is based in reality, that is based in mathematics, that is based in physics itself. And it actually solves these problems all the other people try to solve.
Okay, so here is Michael talking about some similar ideas, but from a different vantage point. When you say conservation of energy and you talk about how this is so important to the physical universe, is it possible to create a digital money without injecting energy into it that is sound? It sounds like you're saying that's impossible. Is that correctly summarized?
I don't think you can. I think that we only have discovered one way that is settled and universally agreed upon to create digital energy or a digital commodity. And the one way is proof of work. I take electricity and I run it through some kind of hashing algorithm. So you could do it with SHA-256. I mean, you could probably come up with another hashing algorithm. You can go with certain other algorithms that do it, but I'm modulating electricity to do work. So I'd say Bitcoin's an example of the creation of a digital commodity. As I said before, if you took away the difficulty adjustment and you took away the halvings, you could have a commodity more so than a scarcity. The brilliance of Bitcoin is not just that it's a digital commodity, but that it's a digital scarcity. If I uncap the amount of Bitcoin or I just let you continue to create it, well, I've got a digital commodity. Well, I mean, oil is a physical commodity, and so it's uncapped. So, I mean, the reason that oil is not necessarily as good an investment as Bitcoin over the long term is A, it's not digital. And so I can't carry $10 billion worth of oil on a USB stick, right? And I can carry $10 billion worth of Bitcoin. And the second reason is it's not a scarcity. 100 oil miners or oil refiners can produce 100 times as much as one. Whereas with Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoin miners can't produce any more Bitcoin than one Bitcoin miner can produce. So oil is not a scarcity, it's a commodity, and it's the physical commodity. Bitcoin is a digital commodity. Now, other people have launched, other groups have launched crypto networks that use proof of work. Ethereum was a proof of work network. You've got the Bitcoin forks, a handful of other cryptos that are proof of work networks. That might make them, what would I say? It might make them an ersatz or an architectural digital commodity. It doesn't guarantee they're a specialty, or it doesn't guarantee their digital scarcity. Like, for example, Dogecoin keeps increasing its supply, right? So it's not a scarcity. It's a proof of work protocol that creates more and more and more, right? So it's a commodity in the same way that someone creates more silver or more soybeans every year, right? It doesn't necessarily make them regulatory commodities or ethical commodities. And the distinction there is, if Apple Computer launched a proof of work network tomorrow and it kept half the coins, it wouldn't be an ethical commodity. It would be an architectural digital commodity, but Apple Computer makes it a security because there's a pre-mine. And so if there's a pre-mine, or if there's an ICO, or if I created a protocol where 10% of all the coins that were mined were funneled to a wallet that I control, that I use to pay developers, right? All of those things make it more of an investment contract or a security, even though it's using energy. So the use of energy doesn't guarantee that something's a commodity. The use of proof of work doesn't guarantee it's a scarcity, right? Because the protocol is what makes it a scarcity, and the provenance is what makes it ethical and a commodity. So Bitcoin's special because it has a provenance. If Satoshi disappears, the Satoshi coins never move. There's no ICO. There's no central development organization. There's no protocol that funnels energy to developers, and there's no pre-mine. So the ethical launch of a digital commodity could create a regulatory commodity or an ethical commodity, which would be deemed as an asset without an issuer. Right, an asset without an issuer is the technical definition, the regulatory definition of a commodity. So the oranges, wheat, coal, steel, soybeans, oil, natural gas are all assets without an issuer, but they're not tapped. Bitcoin is the asset without the issuer because of the ethical provenance, and the way that it becomes without an issuer is you have to have a consensus mechanism that doesn't require the coordination of engineers. So the problem with proof of stake is that proof of stake is a simulation of the universe, or an imaginary universe. You're imagining energy and you're creating a virtual machine. They literally call it a virtual machine with virtual energy in the form of virtual tokens for virtual security, all manifested in software code. Someone has to write that software code. And if you write that software code and you keep changing it over and over and over again, then you've got this problem, which is, how can I continually change the software without someone having influence over the software?
Yeah.
You, in essence, have created a software company. So with Ethereum, the Ethereum Foundation is a software company. There's a lot of software engineers that have to write the software. They have to be paid. Someone has to budget for the payment of the engineers. The only hope you have of something based on software becoming a commodity is you write the software once, you gift it to the world, and then you stop changing it, and you distribute it across 20, 30, 50, 100, 1,000 different parties. And if everybody can run the software, and if there's no need to change it, and if no one organization controls it, now it becomes sufficiently decentralized. So you see, that's the fact pattern with Bitcoin. The reason it's important for Bitcoin to be simple is the software, the protocol needed to be substantially finished when it was first released by January 3rd, 2009. They kind of needed to have it done. They couldn't keep changing the protocol because otherwise you end up with a software company. So proof of work allows you to place the consensus and the security and the integrity of the network in the hands of Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin node runners. So you're using electricity and you're using 256 ASICs in order to create the security and the integrity of the network. And that's generally thermodynamically bound. And it's open and everybody can participate. And anybody can create their own Bitcoin miner. Anybody can mine Bitcoin. Anybody can, electricity is broadly found in the universe. And you're not waiting. You don't need the permission of anybody to allow you to get on the network and mine, nor do you need the permission of anybody to run a node. It's permissionless. And that's what makes it without an issuer. As soon as you decide that you want to get rid of the energy, then you've decided to create a virtual machine, virtual energy. And when they create the energy in a proof of stake network or any other non-energy protocol, you're not just getting rid of the electricity, you're also getting rid of the material energy, which is the SHA-256 mining ASIC. So the application-specific integrated circuit is matter. The electricity is energy. You're eliminating the matter and the energy. And the hardware is important here, just as important as the energy, because the electricity is a commodity, whereas the thing that makes this a specialty or makes it a scarcity is the fact that you're modulating the energy through a SHA-256 mining chip. And that mining chip is a special purpose. That's important. It's not a general purpose chip. And it's also getting exponentially more efficient. So the genius of the Bitcoin protocol is that the hardware is proprietary. There's no other use for it. And it gets exponentially better over time, such that the energy efficiency of the network is improving with Moore's law and with the halving protocol. So that makes this an increasingly efficient security protocol, and it protects the protocol from someone that has a huge amount of commodity computing power or a huge amount of electricity power. It doesn't matter that you build a fusion reactor that generates thousands of terawatts, because it's not the pure electricity that secures the network. It's the encrypted energy. It's the SHA-256 hashes that secure the network. So if there was only the electricity, it would be vulnerable to an attack from someone that harnessed the power of the sun.
I think what you're talking about is one of these questions that I have coming up here. And I'm going to just read this because I think it ties into what you're saying here. In 2017, the World Economic Forum posted an article that said by 2020, the Bitcoin mining could consume the same amount of electricity every year as is currently used by the entire world. This is the World Economic Forum just a couple years ago. Well, as we know, that calculation was grossly misstated, but that doesn't stop other experts from still stating such salacious headlines right now that we're seeing in 2022. What is it that these experts fail to understand about Bitcoin's energy consumption that I think you're getting at with what you were just talking about?
I think what they're missing is that the efficiency of the network is improving with Moore's law exponentially.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what they're missing. The other day, I walked through one of these Newport mansions, and now you can actually download a mobile app to your phone, and then you can download the audio tour, and you can listen to the tour guide, using AirPods, walking through a mansion in the year 2022. Well, I watched this, I'm downloading it, and sometimes the audio tour is 80 megabytes, and sometimes it's 160 megabytes or something. And then I thought back to when I was at MIT, when one of my classmates had a 5 megabyte hard drive or something. And if you simply took and then I thought about the efficiency of audio in the 1980s. And you could have easily said, if people continue to use computer music, or, if Napster spreads computer music, by the year 2010, all of the hardware and all of the electricity in the world will be sucked up listening to rock and roll music. And it would have been true if you extrapolated the efficiency of music compression and the cost of hard drives. You pretty much would have said that we can't allow teenagers to listen to music on a computing device because the world will come to an end. And you could have said the same thing about like digital photos, right? If this keeps up, then teenage girls taking selfies will suck up all of the electricity and all of the minerals in the Earth's crust by the year 20 something or other. And of course, what happens in all cases is the efficiency of computer music and the efficiency of storing files and the capacity of memory, the capacity of computer memory, the capacity of computer drives. These things are increasing exponentially such that it turns out that people can listen to music on their phones to take photos and the world doesn't come to an end. And so when people make these statements about Bitcoin, what they're doing is the same thing. They're missing the point. It's not secured by energy. It's secured by digital energy or an encrypted energy. And the efficiency with which that encryption is taking place is improving somewhere in the range of 36 to 40% a year. Ironically, Moore's law is every 18 months you double.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an 18% improvement every year due to the halving protocol, and if you have an 18% improvement every year because like every 4 years, the ASICs double, okay? You got 36% a year, and when you start dividing that into 70 with a few twists, you realize in about 18 months, you double the efficiency of the network and you keep doing it, for the first 30, 40, 50 years. Maybe you continue to do it for a long time to come. So, as of today, as far as we can see, we run the numbers, Bitcoin has taken up maybe 15 basis points of the world's energy. And it's not clear to me that it's going to grow that much more. At some point, it hits some maximum and it actually starts to decrease because the proprietary protocol is such that ultimately in the year 2100, it won't matter whether you have harnessed all the power of a star. It won't matter because that won't allow you to create hashes. I could give you all the electricity that powers New York City tomorrow, but you can't generate hashes with it unless you can get your hands on 256 mining rigs, set them up in a world-class mining center, get the transformers, and turn it on. So you can see there's already a limiting factor there. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, if Google and Microsoft and Amazon, they all decided tomorrow they're going to turn all of their data centers into Bitcoin mining data centers, their cost, to generate a Bitcoin would probably be like $1 million a coin, if not $10 million a coin, because they don't have ASICs, right? And the ASIC is 1,000 times, it's 1,000,000 times more efficient. So it's this specialization of labor, like the driving of the tractor is a better idea than a hand plow, right? And every field of human endeavor, everything humans put their mind to, we find when we create a specialized machine and then we power that specialized machine, then we overcome any generalist who's well-intentioned. I toured the DuPont gunpowder factories, right? So the DuPont showed up, they set up a factory on a hill where the Brandywine River runs down it. And the reason they wanted this creek is they had to harness the creek for hydropower to turn their water wheel, to turn the mills, to grind the gunpowder. And so here are some smart immigrants. They use the power of gravity, the power of water. Then they mix, 3 elements together. They create gunpowder. They hand you the gunpowder and you blow your way through the mountain. Okay. And someone starts by saying, I have this idea. I'm going to build tunnels through mountains, and some non-technologist says, no, we could never build tunnels through mountains. That will take every single human being in the world and we will all starve to death because it's too expensive using our little rubber mallets or our little chisels to chisel our way through the mountain.
Exactly.
Right. And, and the point is, we're not doing it that way.
Yeah.
We're going to use our brains and technology. If you actually back calculate, someone says, okay, I'm going to connect San Francisco to New York. and you back calculate, well, how much energy is it going to take to haul a bucket of water on my back, 10 million times? Like, well, we can't do that because the human race will suffocate trying to connect New York and San Francisco. And then if you calculate what it costs to build the railroad, you would conclude it's too much. And if you calculate the maintenance cost on wooden rails, that's too much. And the answer is, I invent explosives, I invent steel, I come up with some, technique to get through. Then I create a locomotive. Then I go and I drill for oil. Then I put the oil into the locomotive, and I drive the train back and forth. Every single one of those things would have used all of the energy in the world.
Yeah.
If you were to attempt, we can't give public transportation to people that will use all the energy. All of the ox carts in the world will be allocated to letting people commute back into work. We can't let them live
Michael,
in the suburbs.
This is hard, I think, for a lot of people to wrap their head around, because the examples you're providing are physical examples that people can relate to, and it makes sense to them when you describe it in that way. But when you think about ASICs and you think about Moore's law and you think about how these things that like people can't touch or really kind of understand at the level that you understand and that many people in this space understand, it's just completely lost on them. It's intangible. It's not something they can feel or touch.
Yeah, a Bitcoin miner it's a machine to create security and cyberspace, right? That's what it is. You have to see it as
like a digital vault, if you will. Is that how you describe it? Or
I would almost describe it as a transmitter of encrypted energy. It creates a wall of encrypted energy, right? You're feeding electricity into one end, and out the other end comes a hash wall.
Like a bank vault, like a bank vault, but virtual, right?
Yeah, that's probably an energy vault. You're putting electricity in, and you're creating a vault of encrypted energy, and that's what you're using to build as your foundation to build civilization in cyberspace. I guess, and a lot of people can't figure it out. They can't work it out. But you ever cross a bridge and you look down at, at the caissons or the structures the bridges are built on, and the bridge is resting on these, what are they, caissons, I suppose, resting on these structures, and they're buried 30 feet down into the East River or the Hudson River. And the average person can't figure out how to create that bridge. But that doesn't mean that the bridge doesn't work.
Yeah.
In this particular case, I see the Bitcoin miners as the foundation to hold up the entire digital ecosystem. And we're feeding them electricity, and then we're running them through an ASIC, and the ASICs just keep getting more and more efficient. And just like, you take a history of civil engineering and you look at Greek architecture, and they're using stone architraves. Those things crack, and then they replace them with some wooden beams, and they kind of crack, and then they come up with the idea of a truss. And a truss creates this, dramatically increases the strength of the beams, and now things stop cracking. And that works well for a while, and then they come up with, arches and then buttresses. And of course, ultimately they solve the problem when they figure out how to put enough energy into iron to create steel. Iron works and steel works, and steel is a material energy. It's massively dense energy. And if you want to build structures, you have to create the steel. I think about a steel refinery, and I think about how much energy goes into the refining of steel, and the heat and the energy. And then you think about what comes out. And then if you want to build any structure in the world, right, that steel is the material to build that structure. Bitcoin miners are energy refiners in a way, right? And what they spit out is digital energy. They not only create it, but they secure it. You can also think of them as supporting the railroad in cyberspace, right? Like it's a railroad, and there's a fixed cost to build the railroad, and there's a fixed cost to maintain the railroad when something breaks. But once you've got the railroad and it's properly maintained, now the cost to move tons of cargo from one end of the line to the other end of the line has decreased, not by a factor of 10 or a factor of 100. It's probably decreased by a factor of 10,000 to 100,000. It might have decreased by a factor of 1 million.
Yeah.
If you did the energy calculations, try to move 80 tons of coal from New York to Chicago in one day, without the railroad, without the road on an ox cart. I mean, it's such a silly comparison, right? Because no one would ever think to do it because it's almost impossible to do. But when we created the railroads, we created this extraordinarily expensive upfront engineering project that required a lot of capital investment, very capital intensive. But then after you've created it, then you've got a moderate maintenance cost, and then you get this superconducting effect where you're able to move material at orders and orders of magnitude less cost.
Michael, I have a friend that has sent me an article, kind of getting at some of the things that we've been talking about throughout this interview. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. He goes by Baseload BTC, and he made the comment to me. He said Bitcoin is basically the best ESG investment vehicle in tech ever invented. And so I think for people on the outside, they might hear that statement. They might laugh hysterically and say, how in the world could that possibly be true? It uses energy. But when you look at the incentive structure of what Bitcoin incentivizes, especially on the long tail, 10, 15, 20 years from now, how do you envision Bitcoin miners being integrated into the grid? And do you agree with his statement that it's the best, quote unquote, ESG investment vehicle in tech ever invented?
I do agree with the statement. I think that it's pretty clear that environmentally, it's the most efficient use of electricity to create value that the human race has come up with. And so on the energy side or the environmental side, it seems to me pretty obviously clean and useful. If you look at the other two, the S and the G, from a societal point of view, you're giving economic empowerment to 8 billion people. Digital money to the human race. So it's obviously good for the society. You're banking everybody. And then from a governance point of view, it's a digital asset or a digital network without an issuer.
Yeah.
So corporate governance or governance normally is all about fair governance. And this phrase popped up because there were companies that were thought to be poorly governed, maybe for the benefit of the family or for the benefit of the community to the detriment of the shareholders, et cetera. Bitcoin is literally without a CEO, without a board of directors. It is the most fairly governed thing in the universe. It's more fair than any country, any city, any state, any company. So in terms of ESG, it definitely checks all three boxes. In fact, it hits home runs out of the park on all three. I would probably just make one more point here, which is, like, if you're concerned about ESG, right, you really ask the question, what is a universal entitlement to the human race? Like, the most ESG friendly stuff is clean water, power, bandwidth, like internet access, steel, functioning materials, transportation, and just pure energy, food. So these are things that life is based on. And so if you want to create a civilization, and the Romans knew this, a famous historian, he said, I admire the Romans for their aqueducts, their roads, and their drains. And you think about this, really, drains? Well, the aqueducts brought water to the city, and the normal consequence, of course, is the city population grows by a factor of 10. And without the water, you can't flush away the waste byproduct, because everybody dies of typhus or, some cholera, some awful disease. So you need the water, and then you need the roads to be able to move, right? And then the drains carried away the waste, and they carried away the wastewater and also shed water so that the buildings didn't collapse and kill everybody. So if you think about that, an aqueduct is ESG friendly. It's very expensive to build the first one. And Lord help you, and it's hard to build the first one. I mean, no one else could figure it out. That's why the Romans dominated, because no one could figure it out. And then after the Romans disappeared, people forgot how to do it, and the civilization collapsed. And 90% of the people died in some of these cities because you run out of water 3 days and you're dead. So I think if you think about Bitcoin in the same framework, it's a digital energy network it is providing, the ultimate gift, which is clean money.
Yeah.
Clean money to go along with your clean air, clean power, clean food, clean water. And what happens if the water is dirty? We die. If the air is dirty, we die. If the food is dirty, we die. If the money is dirty, it kills us, right? The money is dirty right now. And you want to see what happens in an environment where the money is dirty, just go to, any economy where the currency is collapsing, like all those people in Lebanon that are robbing banks to try to get their own money back. I don't count the number of people that commit suicide probably after they got wiped out from that, but it's quite a lot. So I think anybody that really cares about ESG ought to care about a fair, equitable monetary network and establishing a stable financial foundation or monetary foundation for the human race to stand on. There could be nothing more important at this stage, I think.
Okay, so this was very, very interesting. And let's go through this now. I'm going to take a number of these quotes that these two very learned individuals talked about, and I'm going to add my comments to it. So let's start with Gigi, the computer scientist. Remember, he's a computer scientist, I'm a computer scientist, so we tend to see things very similarly when it comes to this, right? So proof of stake is a scam, period. Yep. What have I been saying about all these altcoins out there and steering people away from altcoins and telling you all to avoid altcoins? On screen now, performance of Bitcoin versus all the altcoins out there. You see that all those altcoins are 10 to 0 against Bitcoin, right? There's a reason for this, right? As Gigi says, proof of stake is a scam, period. There's no global time on Earth or the universe because of relativity. 10 minutes is long enough for the Earth to agree on a state. This is a physical problem. And what he's talking about here, the way the Bitcoin network works is by something called consensus, right? So remember that in the olden days, right, if you wanted to reach consensus, you needed a central provider, like a bank, a clearinghouse, someone in the middle, right, to say that is a valid transaction. This is not, right? Rubber stamp transaction. So with Bitcoin, you've got a distributed computing network. So computers all over the world need to come to consensus, and Bitcoin's consensus mechanism is called proof of work, right? And that's essentially using electricity. So as he says, the 10 minutes he's referring to is the Bitcoin block time. So every 10 minutes, there is a block that is produced, and inside that block are all the transactions that have occurred on the network, right? 10 minutes is long enough for the Earth to agree on a state. And this is a physical problem. Proof of stake cannot solve this problem, period. You would need to have timestamp servers centralized that tell you the time. Now remember, with Bitcoin, this is all about decentralization. And Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency out there that has reached a sufficient state of decentralization. The rest of them haven't, right? And timestamp servers are very important, right? So what you're saying here, you need timestamp servers centralized that tell you the time. Otherwise, you'd have to spend money that you do not have. Otherwise, you would be able to spend money that you do not have, right? And that's where the network is not reaching consensus. For consensus to arise, you need an absolute order of events. Absolute order of events, right? And proof of work is the only thing that works. Now, the problem with proof of stake, of course, who is allowed to print the money and how do you distribute it, right? How does proof of stake solve this? Who decides on who can print money? Now, that's a very important question, right? Who decides on who can print money? And all these altcoins out there, they're all centralized. They've all got CEOs. They've all got developers, people involved in them, right? And those people themselves, they're deciding who can print the money. They're deciding how much issuance of the tokens there are. Is that fair? Is that ethical? I don't think so. All right. As he says, why are we playing these games? Bitcoin exists. Bitcoin is fair. Why are you trying to print your own money? It's all very unethical. How true is this, right? How true is this? He's starting to lose his patience. He talks about Ethereum having a 70% pre-mine, right? 70%, where you had 5 or 6 people who had 70% of Ethereum before it launched, right? And all the other projects are very similar. Now remember, I've done this analysis before on screen now, the other projects out there. You can see what percentage of those tokens have been pre-mined, right? And how the issuance of those tokens have gone to the insiders at the expense of outsiders or the general public retail investors, right? So with the altcoins, there's a small select group of people who print the money, right? Imagine that, right? It is very, very frustrating. So when I set up over here in Pattaya, Thailand, I could have taken the unethical route. I could have gone and issued my own altcoin and raised money that way. I could have done that, right? And it wouldn't have been very difficult for a computer scientist like myself. But I didn't, because I refused to involve myself in any scam, right? So, so there's a small select group of people who can print money with altcoins. Satoshi Nakamoto, that's the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin, he solved this, and he didn't take any for himself, and he disappeared. Yeah, that's correct. So with Bitcoin, there wasn't any kind of pre-mine, and it was distributed fairly from the start. And Satoshi himself, he disappeared. Nobody's heard from him since. Nobody knows who he is, where he is. He disappeared, right? Which was an amazing thing to do, to just disappear like that. And that's why Bitcoin can't be repeated. It's the immaculate conception of sound money. Proof of stake people have no idea what proof of work solves. They're not even understanding the problem correctly, and all their solutions are flawed. Proof of work relies on physics to tell you what is true, and proof of stake relies on human judgment to tell you what's true. We want to remove humans from the equation for money production and who can control the monetary flow. This is really, really important, what he's saying here, okay? And this is very true. And Bitcoin is the only, I repeat, the only, okay, cryptocurrency out there that is a digital commodity where you don't have a group of people who is able to manipulate the money supply at will, right? Proof of stake does not remove humans from the equation. It's a moral and ethical question. Who should be able to print the money? Who should be able to deplatform you? Who can stop the money flow? Who can freeze the accounts? Bitcoin and proof of work uses physics and mathematics, and is something you can't cheat. Proof of stake in the current fiat system is a quorum of people. Quorum of people, what does that mean? It means a group of people. Quorum, I haven't used that word since I was working in supercomputing. So it's human judgment, proof of stake. Proof of stake is the central bank system we already have. It's immoral, it's unethical. Proof of work is a safe, secure, fair system that is based in reality, physics, math, and solves all the problems. So, right, just think about this. This guy, this software engineer, this computer scientist has nailed it, right? It's absolutely nailed it about what's going on. And these are the things, these are the types of insights that the average retail investor does not have. These are the insights of a computer scientist, right? So very, very important, right? So you can see when a computer scientist comes out and he says stuff like this, and he's absolutely spot on, the average retail investor doesn't understand this, right? It's got no idea when it comes to this. They want to buy tokens and get rich, right? They're not thinking about any of this. And it's very important to be thinking about stuff like this. I'm a computer scientist. I can help guide you, my viewers, right, when it comes to this, right? The mere fact that I'm creating a video like this and I'm referring to this excellent podcast, right, and referring to this particular section of the podcast, right, I'm enlightening you, the viewer, as to the importance of stuff like this, right? And the second part is from Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy. And he's talking about proof of work. You take electricity and you run it through a hashing algorithm, modulating electricity to do work. Bitcoin is the example of the creation of a digital commodity. Bitcoin is a digital commodity and a digital scarcity, right? So it is both. It's a digital commodity. It's a commodity that's out there that's digital, that's got no issue essentially, because the person involved in the project who started it disappeared. It's an immaculate conception. And it's a digital scarcity, of course, because of the halvings, right? Every 4 years, the block reward gets halved. That's the reward that goes to the miners for rubber stamping their transactions on the Bitcoin network, right? If there's a pre-mine or an ICO, that makes it a security. Bang, right there, right? Let's think about this. All of those altcoins that are out there, okay, and there's a huge number of them now, right? All had pre-mines, all got groups of people working in them, and they're all securities. Now, that means they don't pass the Howey test in the United States. If a test to see if something is a security or not. So if there's a pre-mine, right, or an ICO, that makes it a security. Bitcoin's special. Satoshi disappeared. There's no CEO, there's no pre-mine. Bitcoin is an ethical launch. So Bitcoin is the only ethical launch out of all the cryptocurrencies out there, right? So that says that if you're ethical, you'll be involved in Bitcoin, you buy Bitcoin, you invest in Bitcoin. All the rest of this stuff is unethical. So avoid all of it, right? An ethical launch is an asset without an issuer. Bitcoin is the asset without an issuer. The problem with proof of stake is it's a simulation of the universe. You're creating a virtual machine. Someone has to write that software code. The Ethereum Foundation is a software company. The only hope you have of something based on software becoming a commodity is you write the software once, you gift it to the world, and you stop changing it, and you distribute it widely, and everyone can run the software, and there's no need to change it. And there's no one organization that controls it. Then it becomes sufficiently decentralized, and that's Bitcoin, right? Proof of work is using electricity to create the security and integrity of the network. Bitcoin is open. Everyone can participate. Anybody can mine Bitcoin. You don't need permission from anybody to run a node or to mine. It's permissionless. As soon as you get rid of the energy, you've created a virtual machine, right? The efficiency of the Bitcoin network is improving with Moore's law. Now, he goes on to talk about 5 megabyte hard drive back in the day, right? And essentially what he's talking about there is people are not thinking exponentially. Thinking exponentially, okay? Seeing when a piece of technology comes out, people look at it and it looks like a toy and people laugh at it and say, oh yeah, that's never going to be really big, right? Like when the internet first came out, people were like, it's too slow, it's way too slow to be usable. But what did we see over time? Massive improvements, right? People weren't thinking on the exponential. That's really important. I can help people with that, obviously, because I'm a computer scientist. I see all this time after time with new technology. It's the same thing with the Lightning Network today, right? People look at it and think, oh, it's a joke, right? No, incorrect, right? Look at where it's going and think on the exponential. And, it's just, Bitcoin is secured by encrypted energy. Moore's law, every 18 months to double. He talks about that. Everything humans put their mind to, we find a specialized machine to do. So very, very interesting podcast. And I recommend that you listen to the entire thing. But these 2 sections of the podcast in particular are the most important. And really the Gigi, the software engineer, computer scientist and Bitcoiner, what he said there is absolutely spot on. Now, what are lessons for over here in Pattaya, Thailand, for the work that I'm doing over here in the red light districts? Well, red light districts, when we think of red light districts, what do we think? We think, scam or money, or people will be onto me for money, this and that, right? Tourist trap, all this sort of stuff. Well, okay, it would have been very easy to go down to Soy 6 and start banging on about, I've created my own altcoin. I'm going to issue these altcoins. I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy up all the bars. I'm going to do this or do that. Or my solution solves all these problems. No. Okay, no. I came here to Thailand and I put an important solution out on the street, BTCPay Server, Bitcoin, okay, and the Bitcoin Lightning Network, right? Ethical money, okay? Ethical money in a red light district, okay? Somebody else might come out here and introduce some altcoins to the district. Well, you all know now, because of my videos, that Bitcoin is the only ethical money, and I've already put that out on the street there in Soy 6, right? So setting up all those bar girls with Bitcoin wallets, custodial, non-custodial, right? Doing things the ethical, fair way, right? Not involving them in any kind of altcoin scam, not involving the bars or anybody in Soy 6, the red light district, with any kind of scam, right? This has been one of the biggest problems in working over here, is everybody's got their guards up when it comes to not just crypto, but everything else, because they are used to people coming over here with some kind of scam, right? And it's very, very frustrating. This podcast, very, very important. As I said, I recommend that you all take a listen to it. And that computer scientist, he is absolutely spot on. Remember the lessons. Avoid altcoins, okay? Bitcoin is the only ethical money. It's the only ethical money out there that's using proof of work. Sure, there's other proof of work coins out there, right? But none of them have got a shot at becoming global money or a reserve treasury asset for the world, right? So remember the lessons of this podcast. That's it from me, everyone. All the best. I'm Clarke Towson, CEO of INTJ Billing.